Let's bring in Tony Clark, who went toe-to-toe with the commissioner for the last couple of months on this. Tony, how you feeling today as we get training camp started or restarted?
Good morning, Dan. Excited to have the guys back in camp, even though we have the challenges that we do, but excited to have the guys back doing what they love doing.
What did you make of the commissioner validating what I had been told, that once they got settled on 60 with ownership, that they weren't budging off 60 games?
Well, that's the decision that they decided to make. I think throughout the process, we highlighted the interest in playing as many games as possible from start to finish and maintain that position. But it appears that their interests were a little bit different, particularly as things progressed toward where we landed.
What was the main reason it took this long to get something done?
Well, I think that the interests from the other side appeared to be that 60 games, despite having made the proposals that they made earlier. In other words, from start to finish, there was an interest in a certain amount of money being spent against a backdrop of a particular number of games being played. So that conversation spanned the 2 months that it did in the fashion that it did.
I know that's a large part of what we focused on was the back and forth, and having covered strikes and lockouts, I never worried about the negotiations. I figured they would always get settled. It's not a pretty picture for either side here, but I worry about the safety guidelines here, Tony, of just being able to play baseball. You know, everybody was talking about the money and games, and I said, can we actually pull this off? How confident are you we'll have a 60-game season?
Well, to be clear, the other side was the one talking about money. We ended up as part of that conversation. Our focus was the health and safety. To your point, guys recognize that we're in unprecedented times, and the protocols are going to be and processes are going to be much different than anything they've experienced before. And so it is challenging, and everybody's got a role to play. Not just on the field, but off the field, and guys understand that. So we're hopeful, particularly as guys arrive into camp as we speak, that they can get comfortable with those protocols, that their families and all involved can be comfortable with those protocols, and then do our best to make sure that we're able to keep everyone healthy as possible, and play as many games as possible.
Do you take it personally, what happens with the negotiations with the commissioner?
No, no. At the end of our day, our responsibility, my responsibility, is fairly simple, and that is making sure to protect and advance the interests of our players, of our members. So no, it doesn't end up being personal. Obviously, as a player, a former player, I guess I should say, my love and passion for the game remains. So that's not going to change. But our role and responsibility is pretty consistent, start to finish.
But you know these players are they took this personally, and that next collective bargaining agreement, Tony, it's gonna be ugly.
There are a lot of predictions and a lot of open-ended questions at this point. We'll have to see how things progress. But I think as much as anything, when the game is attacked, when when players are attacked, when their union is attacked, sure, there are personal interests that become a part of that conversation. But we're still a little ways away. Guys' eyes were opened. I think it was a bit of a wake-up call these last couple of months with the challenges that we needed to work through. But we'll see how those negotiations go here moving forward.
What about Black Lives Matter with the players? Anything planned?
Well, needless to say, it's a very personal issue for me. It's a very personal issue for our players. And so there is nothing scheduled at this point in time, but there is a lot of dialogue that is happening behind the scenes, both with our players and eventually, as we anticipate, with the league as well.
We were talking baseball, and Don Mattingly was on the first hour. And it's amazing how you guys recall the inning or the pitch. It's amazing. Whether it's John Smoltz talking about facing Bonds or it's Mattingly facing Roger Clemens, and he's telling you the count, the pitches, like everything. Do you have a moment? Because people should know that you played baseball for a long period of time. But is there one of those moments where you kind of go back to, and it was a great magical moment for you?
Well, I have a number of them. It's hard to highlight one, but I'll offer this initial one, which was uh, my first big league game. As you mentioned, I was fortunate to have played over the course of 15 seasons in the big leagues and a number of years in the minor leagues, and had aspirations even when I was younger of playing professional basketball. But my very first day in the big leagues, and playing for Sparky Anderson, and looking to my left and seeing Lou Whitaker and Alan Trammell, and looking to my right and seeing Cecil Fielder, who took me under his wing when I got there. That very first game, and each of the at bats, struck out my first at bat. I struck out my second at bat, and uh, hit a ground ball to second. My third at bat, and was excited to actually have put the ball in play. And then my fourth at bat got my first hit off of Julian Tavares, and then got my second at bat, second hit in my fifth at bat off of Jose Mesa. And you'll probably recall, as a baseball fan yourself, that in the mid '90s, those Cleveland Indians teams were something special. So that very first game, and having an opportunity to step on the field where a number of the greats did, including Al Kaline, who was somebody I leaned on as well. It's something that I'll never forget.
Well, you probably got some bullet holes there, maybe bleeding a little bit from those negotiations, but you live to see another day. Hopefully, we get 60-game season. I'm not as optimistic, but I'm hopeful. But maybe we get it. And I wish you luck, Tony, because I know what those negotiations are going to be like. Going to be rough. Going to be rough.
I appreciate it, and there's a lot that we're going to have to work through. A lot of concerns with respect to where our game is and where it's going. So we'll be diligent, and we'll grind through it.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Dan.
That's Tony Clark, the executive director of the Baseball Players Association.